Hello, everybody. How are you? I'm supposed to be finishing a book for a deadline, but I'd rather be here with you because you guys are awesome. And this book isn't going to read itself. Nope. Can't hear a thing. Isn't going to read itself. So it's up to me, valiant Alexander Gordon-Smith, to keep reading Devil's Engine, Hellfighters. We're in Paris now, and Marlowe and Pan and the others are looking for the engine in its original place where it was built. It was built somewhere around here, and although the red door allows it to be accessed from various places across the globe, its physical presence, they think, lies beneath the streets of Paris. So yeah. And the fact that the engines are being reunited, or so they think, is making all of Paris lose its mind. Everybody's fighting. So, here we go. The next chapter is called Nope. Paris was losing itself. Pan watched it coming apart at the seams, the threads that made this great city being pulled by the engines that surely lay somewhere beneath it. I'm a bit snotty, sorry. Through the filthy window, she saw people running down the streets, teeth bared. She saw dogs savaging their owners. She saw broken windows and a burning car and at least 24 emergency vehicles fighting to get through the chaos. As they pulled back onto the road that ran parallel to the river, she thought she saw people jumping from the bridges, a line of them, like synchronised divers. "Hang on!" yelled Torp from the driver's seat. He'd loaded them into an old Russian army bus that looked like it hadn't been driven or cleaned since World War II. The windows were smeared with orange dirt, and what must have been half a sand dune formed drifts around their feet every time the bus turned a corner. He changed gears and the vehicle bellowed, shuddering so hard she had to grab the seat in front to stop from sliding to the floor. The crossbow dug into her back, and she shifted it to the side. "It is not far," he said. "Oh, thank God," muttered Marlowe from across the aisle. "He needs a driving lesson." She ignored him, sneaking a glance at Torp's reflection in the rearview mirror. The guy was cute, ridiculously cute. Even amidst the chaos, even though he was driving them to war, there was no denying it. More than that, though, she'd heard about him. Betty, the woman who patched them up after each mission, who'd done her best to stitch the pieces back together, had always spoken about the Frenchman. She'd been a little obsessed with him, which was kind of weird given that she'd been in her 50s and Torp had been a teenager. Less weird, though, now that Pan had met him. "Oh, pull yourself together," she thought, turning to the window. They passed a fire truck that was actually on fire. That had to be one of the signs of the apocalypse, right? She looked at the mirror again, studying Torp's eyes, the furrow of his brow. He must have sensed her because he looked up, his reflection winking. She turned away sharply, the heat burrowing into her face. Marlowe was looking at her too, and he was wearing the expression of a kid whose favourite toy has been snatched away. "What?" she demanded. "He's..." Marlowe started, shrugging. He looked like he was about to burst into tears. "He's French!" Pan shook her head, turning her attention to Herc in the seat in front of her. The rucksack sat next to him. "What's in there?" she asked. "A surprise," he said. "A little present for my mum." She didn't have the energy to pursue it. "So what do we know?" "What do we know?" Herc replied, leaning his elbow on the back of his seat. "Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But we can guess. One thing we always suspected was that wherever the engines are, you can be sure to find death." "Death?" said Marlowe, leaning across the aisle. "How do you mean?" "Death," said Herc, shrugging, like not living. "It's why you'll find the red doors in big cities, old cities. The red doors pump out bad vibes like a faulty nuclear reactor pumps out radiation. Murder rates skyrocket near every place the door opens to. Assault, suicide, everything you can think of. And that's just at a door, not the engine." He smoothed a hand down his stubble, contemplating something. "You have to understand that the Fist has been hunting for the actual location of the engine for centuries." "Mamon's engine," said Marlowe. Herc shook his head. "No, our own. Nobody's ever known. They've just accessed it through the red door. The door essentially teleported them to the engine's location." Pan thought of the way it pulled you apart and the way it put you back together, layer by layer, cell by cell. Even with today's technology, nada. Ostheimer spent a fortune scanning beneath cities using satellite imaging and that sort of thing, but whoever built the engine, or the engines, wanted to keep them hidden. "I thought they wanted people to find them, though," said Pam, holding onto her seat as Torp steered them around another corner. "To use them. Find the door, yes, said Herc. Find a way inside so they can make a deal, yes, but find the actual engine? No. It would make it too vulnerable, too easy to locate and destroy. The red door was smart. You always knew that bastard thing was watching you, that it could, read you somehow. Pan's flesh crawled at the memory. The door had been an evil piece of work, no doubt about it. Clever, too. But the engines, both of them, they were hidden somewhere deep, somewhere almost impossible to find. They were... Something smashed into the window by Herc's head, spraying glass. He swore, turning to yell at a couple of teenage boys in the street. They lobbed another couple of bricks, but Torp put his foot on the gas, the bus roaring out of reach. "Oh, damn things," Herc said, brushing the shards from his head. "Where was I?" "Engines impossible to find," said Pam. "We don't stand a chance, boosting our morale." "They were," he said, "but not anymore. Mammon is trying to bring the engines together, his and ours. In order to do that, as far as we can tell, they have to move. It's just physics, plain and simple. It's like a hunter waiting for its prey to break cover. Invisible when it's still, but as soon as it moves, you get your shot." "Yeah, you get a second or two. Then it's gone forever," she thought. "So, death," Marlowe said. Oh yeah, death. There's one thing so far that all of the Red Door locations have in common. They're in or close to churches." "Ironic," said Pam. "Yeah, sure," said Herc. "Makes sense, though. If the Red Door's corrupt, then why not consecrate the ground? Try to, unsalt the earth." "Good way of hiding them, too," said Pam. "You don't look for the devil in a church." "True," said Herc. The bus lurched as it ploughed into something, Torp not slowing down. Not just churches either, but graveyards, cemeteries. The Red Doors were always surrounded by the dead. "Corpses," said Marlowe. "The more dead the bodies, the better," said Herc. "The church in Prague was built over a boneyard, an ossuary. If you kept walking down those basement tunnels, you'd have found the skeletons of a few thousand people." "And you let me use the bathroom down there," said Truck, from the back. "Paris has tunnels filled with bones," said Marlowe. Herc nodded. "The city is built on them. There are 6 million dead beneath us right now." "What?" said Marlowe, shaking his head. "Nope." "The catacombs," said Herc. 1,000 miles of tunnels that cross the city, built from bones, the world's biggest graveyard." "Nope," he said again. "And somewhere down there, as far as we can tell, are the engines." "Just nope," said Marlowe. "So this place is the world's biggest graveyard, and you've never thought to look here," said Pam. "Of course we've looked," Herc replied. "We've had teams down there for years, mapping the tunnels, cataloguing the contents and looking for clues. Ostheim has had tectonic ultrasounds made from the basement of pretty much every building in Paris, probing. But you've got to understand, these tunnels, they're old mines connected to even older cave systems. They're deep." We've lost more than one person in there," yelled Torp. "Just vanished into the walls like the dead pulled them in, devoured them. Hang on." His cell was ringing and he pulled it from his pants pocket, the bus lurching as he let go of the wheel. "Because the engines, they have ways of protecting themselves," said Herc. "Hiding themselves." Pam blew out a sigh. 6 years she'd been running missions for Ostheim and Herc. 6 years she'd been a member of the Fist, and she felt like she knew less now than she ever had. "It's our best shot," said Herc. "Right now, it's our only shot." "And we've just had confirmation," Torp said. "The code readers, they found a cluster of anomalies at the entrance to the catacombs. Engineers." "And they know we're coming," said Pam. "Let's go crush some ass then," said Truck. The bus roared around a corner, Pam sliding across her seat and nearly falling into the aisle. Hang on. Herc shook his head. "No way. It's too easy. Stop the bus, Torp." The Frenchman did as he was told, bumping them up onto the curb. Over the idling engine, Pan could hear more shouts from outside and a scream. "What?" asked Torp, looking back. "We have to assume Mammon knows we're here, and that we'll be looking for anomalies. So he sends all his engineers to the entrance of the catacombs." "To protect them," said Truck. "Like Marley said, he knows we're coming. Or to pull us off the scent." It wasn't Marley who said that. It was Pan who said that. "Like Pan said, he knows we're coming. Or to pull us off the scent," said Pan. And Herc nodded. "We head straight to them, and even if we do get past the guards, we're in the wrong place. He's lured us away from where we need to be." Or he's just protecting the right place," said Marlowe. "How do we know?" Herc popped his lips. "You heard from Ostheim?" he asked Torp. The other guy shook his head. "What about any other blips, smaller ones?" "A couple," said Torp. "One on the Seine, another in the metro station." "Which metro station?" "Châtelet, Rue de Saint-Denis, near... I know where it is," said Herc. "Head there. That's where we need to be." "Why?" Torp asked. It does not make sense, scurrying around like this. We should meet Mammon, head on. It's what he wants us to do, Herc said. I know him. I've been smacking heads with that arsehole longer than any of you have been alive. I'm telling you, it's a trap. I think not, said Torp. We carry on. He gunned the engine, the bus thumping down onto the street and into traffic. Pan and Herc shared a look, and Pan flexed her fingers to shake up a charge. Torp may have been a legend. He may have been the best-looking guy she'd seen in a long while, but times changed and people changed. In this line of work, you couldn't trust anyone. Herc must have been thinking the same thing, because he'd unbuttoned the holster of his sidearm, pulling out a Desert Eagle. He aimed it at the back of Torp's head. Hey, Torp, he growled. I need you to turn this bus around. Torp glanced in the mirror, then looked over his shoulder. Hey, Herc, chill, man. This is the right move. Herc cocked the hammer, finger on the trigger. That's an order, Torp. You stopped being able to give me orders a long while ago, old man. He's working for them, Pan thought. He's on Mammon's payroll and he's taken us right to him. A spark escaped her finger and fizzed across the floor of the bus. Ostheim said, whatever it took, Herc, Torp said, the bus going even faster, glancing off the side of a parked car. He said this was going to be brutal. Mammon is preparing for a fight because he knows we are onto him. I'm telling you, if we head to the catacombs, to where his engineers are waiting, then we've as good as found the engine. Torp! Herc yelled. They swept around a corner hard enough to shunt Herc from his seat. His gun fired, a round ricocheting off the roof. Torp was whooping now, gunning the bus up to 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. Paris just a blur outside the window. Then he slammed on the brakes, and Pan's head snapped forward, her forehead connecting with the seat in front. The crossbow swung over her shoulder, landing in her lap. She blinked away the stars, pushing herself up and groaning. The electricity was a cold current in her arms, and she clenched her fists to hold it back. She was going to fry Torp alive, but not before she'd gouged every last truth from his evil, ridiculously good-looking face. Oh, God damn it, Torp, said Herc, collecting his gun from the floor and levelling it. Please tell me you didn't sell us up the river. Never, he replied with that flawless grin. Not you, Herc. I'm here to fight. I'm here to stop Mammon before he opens the gates of hell and we all get pitchforked to death. Pan held her breath. Holding back the charge was like holding a pulled bow. Her whole body was shaking with the effort of it. Torp glanced out of the window. They were sitting in the shadow of a huge statue, a bronze lion, and past that there was movement. But if I were you, I'd be pointing that gun over there, Torp said, grabbing the edge of the driver's seat in white-knuckled hands, because we have company. And Pan barely had time to look before something collided with the bus and her world flipped upside down. Next chapter. Always outnumbered, never outgunned. It was like a train had hit them, the bus rolling onto its side. Marlowe didn't even have time to scream as he slammed into the window, then onto the ceiling as the bus flipped again. The air was a tornado of glass, grinding into his skin, his lungs. Another impact, a squeal of metal as the bus was shunted across the street. One side of the bus caved in like they were inside a compactor. Pan was ahead, picking herself up from a puddle of blood, the crossbow strapped on her back. Her nose was streaming and she wiped it with her hand. Then she aimed her fingers at the windows and unleashed a charge of energy that blazed into the street. A boom of thunder detonated inside the bus, and there was nothing in Marlowe's head but static. He stood, banging his head on one of the seats that now hung above him. It was like he'd been packed in cotton wool, everything muffled, everything fuzzy. Pan was standing in a cloud of vaporized blood and smoke, a shimmering vision who pulled back her hand and then thrust it forward. This time Marlowe turned away from the wave of cold fury, pressing his hands to his ears against the boom that followed. Somebody ripped the rear doors from the bus, letting in a wave of blinding sunshine. I got them, said a silhouette, climbing inside. Move, came a muffled cry, Herc pushing past Marlowe, his Desert Eagle barking. The silhouette lurched, groaning as he fell back through the doors. Herc grabbed a handful of Marlowe's t-shirt, hauling him along. We're sitting ducks, we've got to get out of the bus. Marlowe did as he was told, his heart trying to jackhammer its way through his ribs. Truck was moving, shotgun roaring as he stepped into the day. Herc! Yelled Torp, lobbing the bazooka up the bus. Herc let go of Marlowe and snatched it, then struggled to get the rucksack on. Marlowe left him to it, stumbling towards the open doors of the upside-down bus. More thunder, an assault rifle spitting rounds. Marlowe almost threw himself to the floor before he realised it was Torp, spraying hell from the front of the bus. Then he was outside, blinded by sunlight as he stepped onto the street. "Marlowe!" Truck yelled, enough warning for him to twist around and see the punch coming. He dodged, and the fist glanced off his chin, still hard enough to make it feel like his head had come loose. The silhouette was there, not a shadow anymore, but a young guy who had to be bigger than Truck, his night camo overalls bulging with muscles. He lunged in again, a vicious uppercut that connected right where it meant to. Marlowe was airborne, feeling like he'd been launched from a catapult. He flipped twice, landing awkwardly on his shoulder. The agony was arm in a blender bad, but he could still move. Nothing was broken. The engine in his blood was protecting him. He pushed himself up, the guy running at him over the cobbled street. Behind him, another searing fork of lightning burst from the bus, rippling across the street and into the side of a building. The man flinched at the sound of it, losing his footing. Marlowe ran, time slowing. He glanced right to see Truck frozen still, a plume of fire sticking out from the end of his shotgun. To the left was a rippling line of bullets hanging in the air between the bus and the buildings and glowing like fairy lights. Torp shooting across the street to where a girl stood, dressed in the same black and grey camouflage. She couldn't have been older than 14. Herc was halfway out of the bus, a face like grim death. Then Marlowe reached the man and time snapped back in a hurricane of noise and movement. The guy blinked in surprise as he saw Marlowe materialise. He's new, Marlowe understood. He's just been recruited. He let loose a punch that connected with the guy's face. He had a jaw that belonged to a cast-iron bull, but it didn't save him. The impact from Marlowe's fist like being hit by a wrecking ball. He flew back, skimming over the street and slamming into a green metal outbuilding by the side of the road. There were people everywhere, Marlowe noticed, normals who were fleeing from the carnage. And there, streaming from the same green building, 2 more teenagers in black. "Incoming!" Marlowe yelled. Then something crunched into the back of his skull. He staggered forwards, feeling like his eyeballs had been knocked loose. When he turned around again, there was nobody there, but it didn't stop something pounding him in the head. Once, twice, his vision full of white noise. "What the—" Another phantom punch connected with his kidneys, and he broke into a run to escape, time stretching out before him. He glanced back as he sprinted, seeing a shimmering blur, one that flickered and jarred like a video glitch. Somewhere in the movement he made out a girl, the same girl that had been standing on the other side of the street. She must have traded for invisibility. Marlowe skidded back into real time, breathing hard. The bus was on fire now, Torp clambering through the shattered windshield. Pan scrambled out the back, shaking smoke from her blackened hands, her face etched with pain. She saw Marlowe jogging to his side. Truck was there too, lumbering over, his face slick with sweat. "Watch out," Marlowe said. "There's a—" Truck yelped, toppling like a fallen oak. Felled oak. Blood squirted from his lip as it was hit by an invisible fist. Marlowe didn't hesitate, lunging forward, feeling for the girl, connecting with a bag of cloth and flesh. She screamed and he felt a hand on his arm, teeth in his flesh. Grabbing tight, he swung himself around in a circle and lobbed the girl like he was throwing a hammer. One of the trees along the side of the road bent and swayed as she hit it. Then she flickered back into view, sliding along the ground. "What's your 4 o'clock?" yelled Herc. Marlowe looked left, saw nothing. "4, you idiot! Look right!" He did as he was told, seeing the 2 black-suited engineers jogging across the road, heading right for them. Another 3 were pushing their way out of the half-demolished green building. One of them with bright red hair. "Oh God, not this bimbo again," said Pam. The redhead pointed at them, her face alive with fury. Then she broke into a run, pulling a copper-coloured blade from her belt. Oh no. Pan splayed her fingers and fired out a jagged current of electricity, one that tore up the street in a tidal wave of cobbles. The girl screamed, vanishing into the blast, and for a second Marlowe almost cheered. Then she was out, running right for the statue that stood in the middle of the street. She leapt up, jammed the knife into the body of the bronze lion. The statue groaned like a living thing, the bronze bending, stretching. A face appeared in the lion's ribs, a demon pushing its way through from the other side. "Oh boy," said Truck, as Pan helped him to his feet. "There's a monster from hell taking possession of a giant metal lion, and the best you can do is, oh boy," said Pan, raising an eyebrow. It fell just as fast, and she let out a curse of her own. Marlowe followed her line of sight to see one of the older engineers stop in the middle of the street. A girl, maybe Pan's age. She grimaced, then her entire body burst into flames. This is new. The burning girl stretched out her hands, and a plume of fire burned out of them. Flamethrower fierce. It sluiced across the street, the force of it pushing Marlowe back, scattering them. The ground was trembling as the demon lion thing leapt from its pedestal, shaking itself like a wet dog before breaking into a lopsided run. Still more engineers were pouring from the half-demolished shed, an army of them. Then Marlowe lost sight of them behind another wall of flame. It was hopeless. "We're outnumbered," he yelled, choking on smoke, not even sure if anyone could hear him in the chaos. He thumped into something big and flailed against it, only to hear Herc's voice. "Always outnumbered," he growled, hefting the bazooka onto his shoulder. "Never outgunned." The old guy took a deep breath, then pulled the trigger. A pillar of exhaust flame burned from the back of the tube as something shot out of the front. The missile whistled as it cut across the street, punching a hole in the front of the green building just as another engineer was running from the door. The building exploded, a fist of heat and sound that knocked Marlowe to his knees. The air was suddenly an orchestra of screams, and through the sun flares in his vision, Marlowe saw pieces of black cloth and burning flesh scattered across the street. He dropped onto all fours, retching, nothing inside him but bile. "Pan!" he heard Truck shout. Marlowe looked with watering eyes to see the demon lion running right for her. She fired off a blast of energy with one hand, trying to pull free her crossbow with the other. Then a billowing cloud of smoke rolled over them, and they vanished. "Oh, get up," he told himself, but his legs were made of ash, not enough left there to carry him. He crawled instead, silently yelling, "Get up, get up, get up," until he somehow managed it. The entire street was an inferno, trees popping in the blistering heat, electrical wires sparking. It wasn't all from the explosion, he realised. The ground near the green building was glowing like molten rock, so bright that he could barely look into it. A car parked near the curb was already sinking, along with the corpses of anyone who'd been caught in the blast. There was something else in the air too, something worse than smoke, worse than the stench of burning flesh. Sulphur. The smoke on the far side of the street was suddenly split by lightning, Pan shouting something from in there. He limped towards the sound of her voice. The lion demon screamed, the noise echoed by something that pushed its way from the street, an asphalt torso, a shell of cobbles like a turtle. It shook its head until a snout had formed, teeth snapping. Demons, coming to collect their dead. The asphalt monster ran, snatching up burning limbs from the molten earth. Marlowe could hear more shrieks, knew that they weren't coming from anything living. It was the souls of the enemy engineers being dragged into hell. Gunshots. Marlowe followed the sound of them, heading into the choking smoke. It cleared for an instant and he saw Pan there, dodging the lion demon like a bullfighter, trying to find a clear shot. She dived beneath its foot, rolled an instant before it came crashing down. Torp was there too, assault rifle bucking in his grip as he fired rounds into the demon's hide. Truck burst from the smoke, looking like he was about to cough up a lung. He aimed his shotgun and fired, the rounds ricocheting off the creature's metal hide like a handful of sand. Where the hell was Herc and his big girl? The beast roared, its jaws snapping shut, a hair's width from Pan's face. She staggered away, eyes screwed shut, a trickle of electricity dribbling from her palms. Marlowe put his head down, calling her name as he charged. Even with the engine inside him, he didn't think he stood much of a chance against the solid metal demon beast. But it was Pan. He thumped into it like a linebacker, bouncing right off with a head full of stars. The demon swung around lazily. It had no eyes, not really, but Marlowe felt it look at him, felt it try to figure out what he was. It was like somebody had let loose a clutch of spiders inside his soul, and despite the heat of hell around him, his blood ran cold. The demon sniffed the air, growled, and then began to run right for him. Oh, far! He threw himself to the side, the demon passing him like a locomotive. He scrabbled up, waiting for the attack. But the creature was running away, heading for the molten ground and throwing itself into the fray. There were other demons there now, maybe a dozen of them, more still pulling themselves out of the stone buildings that lined the street. The bronze lion joined them, howling like a coyote. It picked up a smaller demon in its jaws and threw it to one side, pushing its face into the glowing earth and digging out a body. "Bastards," said Herc. He'd reloaded the bazooka and he got down on one knee, firing another missile. This one struck the back of the lion demon and the whole scene was obliterated by light and heat. Herc was already running again, yelling, "Go, go, go!" Marlowe followed him, every step an effort. They cut left, giving the demons a wide berth. Marlowe could still hear them, the gargled cries, the snapping of jaws, those awful endless screams from Amon's dead and dying engineers. Another scream, this one very much alive. He glanced over and saw a shape in the flames. It was the girl, the young one, no longer invisible. She was curled up onto a ball on the curb. She hadn't died, and her contract hadn't expired, but in a feeding frenzy like this, there was no guarantee the demons wouldn't tear her to pieces just for the fun of it. Marlowe stopped, shook his head. Oh, don't do it. The others were heading across a patch of grass behind the green building. Nobody looked back. Just keep running, Marlowe. He looked again. The girl cowering. Even with her powers, she didn't stand a chance. She's just a kid. And the last time he tried to help someone, Knight had died. But she's just a kid. She's just like me. He doubled back, forcing himself into a sprint. Time slowed reluctantly this time. He could feel the shudder and shake of it, an overwhelming groan like the universe was about to spin off its axis. In the sudden quiet, the horror of the scene was almost too much. 24 demons teeming over one another in slow motion, reducing flesh to mincemeat as they dug for souls. He skidded down beside the girl, ignoring the ear-pulping roar of reality. He didn't stop to introduce himself, just scooped her up and doubled back. Somebody was shouting behind him, and he felt another fist of heat strike him on the back. The flamethrower girl. Then he was around the corner, fumbling across the grass. The girl was struggling in his arms, but he held on tight. There was no sign of the others, but before his stomach could fall all the way into his feet, he heard a hiss, looked to see Herc peeking up from behind a brick wall. The old guy lifted his hands to say, "What the hell?" Just a side note, when it said looked up to see Herc peeking up from behind a brick wall, originally, thanks to a typo, that said looked up to see Herc peeing up from behind a brick wall, and we almost didn't catch it, which would have been hilarious. Really random, Herc just having a wee in the middle of this scene behind a brick wall. Anyway, the old guy lifted his hands to say, "What the hell?" "Just," Marlowe said, and he couldn't find the breath for any more. He tossed the girl over the wall as gently as he could, then vaulted it himself. They were in a courtyard, a gated passage opposite. Pan, Truck and Torp were already there. Pan took one look at Marlowe, then another at the girl, shaking her head in disgust. "Oh, you idiot." The girl was scrabbling back across the ground, scrunching her eyes shut like she was trying to blink her way out of the world. "Could use you over here," yelled Truck, his hands on the bars of the gate. "My arms haven't got the horsepower they used to." Marlowe nodded, gulping down air as he crossed the courtyard. He grabbed the gate, planted his feet, and pulled. It resisted for all of 3 seconds before the bolts exploded from the brick wall. Marlowe threw the gate away, letting Pan go first, then Torp, then Truck. Pan looked back long enough to yell, "You're not bringing her!" Then she was gone, clattering down some steps. Marlowe glanced back. They were on the other side of the green building, he noticed. It was up in flames, and the sound of screaming demons was just as loud here as it had been on the street. The building would be rubble and ash in a minute, maybe less. The girl was backing towards it, glaring at Herc, then at Marlowe. Herc shrugged at her. "You can take your chances with us, or with them," he said, offering her a big, calloused hand. A roar that could have come from a jumbo jet, the sound of shearing metal and crumbling brick. The girl looked back, then got to her feet, running past Herc, then past Marlowe, and disappearing into the passage. "And I thought I was soft," Herc grumbled as he passed them, the bazooka still mounted on his shoulder, the rucksack jiggling on his back like he was a pack mule. "Come on, Mother Teresa." Marlowe followed him, hearing the roar of the building as it collapsed behind them, the screams of the demons and the shouts of whatever enemy engineers had survived. He skipped down some stone steps into a cold, dank corridor. It took him a moment to realise that the walls were made of bones. "Brace yourselves," yelled Herc, his voice echoing. He aimed the bazooka back up the stairs. "Wait, Herc, no!" said Pan. Too late. He fired, the sound deafening in such a small space. The exhaust jet spat back, so hot that it ignited Pan's hair. She didn't even have time to yell before the missile hit the top of the passageway, detonating. Marlowe threw himself to the ground, everything shaking, as if the whole world were collapsing around him, as if they were being buried alive. It seemed like forever before it stopped, but eventually it did, plunging them into the cold, dark silence of the world's largest graveyard. The next chapter is called The City of Death. very apt it is too. There were no working lights down here, Pan realised. But seeing wasn't exactly a problem, because her hair was on fire. Her hair was on fire. Pan slapped at her head, gagging at the stench. The flames illuminated the bones that made up the walls, the grinning skulls. Not that she could see much past the eye-watering pain of it. Her scalp stung like she'd been apple-bobbing in a vat of acid, but after a second or two, the fire fizzled out. "Oh, God damn it, Herc," she said to the sudden darkness. "A little warning?" "Sorry," said the big guy. "It was a time-sensitive shot." Pan heard rustling, then a rattle. There was a soft click and the corridor popped out of the dark again, illuminated by the huge maglite in Herc's hand. He beamed it back and forth, blinding her. She blinked, feeling instinctively for the crossbow strapped to her back. She hadn't used it in the battle outside, even when the lion demon was trying to bite her in two. With only 3 bolts, she wanted to save it for when she was face to face with Maman. Only now, in the relative quiet, could she still hear muted roars from outside. Only now, in the relative quiet, she could still hear muted roars from outside, the patter of dust and rubble, the deep, ragged breaths from around her. Did her body seem to remember that it had been injured? The pain crept back in, slowly but insistently, starting in the pounding muscles of her calves, moving up through a sprained knee, a torn muscle in her lower back, bruised ribs, and a nose that might have been broken. It was just pain, though, as familiar as an old friend. And welcome, too, because if you were hurting, it meant you were still alive. It was Herc who'd always said that to her after a mission. "Oh, man, that was bad," said Truck, pacing back and forth between the walls. He reached out and placed his hand on them, then seemed to notice the bones there, recoiling. She knew exactly what he was thinking. This could have been us, dead and buried. Give it time, Truck, she thought. The day isn't over yet. Nobody missing any body parts?" Herc asked. There was a collective clapping of hands on flesh as they all patted themselves down. Pan could already feel the power of the engine coursing through her, the contract keeping her alive, repairing wounds. "I'm cool," said Truck. He had no contract, but he'd been in enough scrapes to know how to handle pain. "All well and good here," said Torp. "Nothing missing," said Marlowe, "but everything hurts." "Well, that's good," Herc replied. "If you feel pain, it means you're still alive." Pan couldn't help but smile at the old guy's predictability. Where'd the girl go?" he asked. "You brought her in," said Pan. "You idiot, Marlowe. Didn't you learn anything from the train?" "Always try to rescue people. How could anyone be such a selfish jerk?" She looked behind her. In one direction, the tunnel was a mound of rock, debris still falling from the collapsed ceiling. The other way stretched into darkness, no sign of anybody else. "That was real stupid, Herc. If this is the path to Maman, then she's going to be halfway to him by now. Bang goes our element of surprise." "Pan, we just blew up half of Paris," Herc said. "God knows how many of his engineers died out there. A giant metal lion was eating people. Our element of surprise went out the window a while back." Pan shook her head, shooting Marlowe a look she hoped he could feel. She leaned back against the uncomfortable wall so that she wouldn't crumple onto the floor, shatter like bone. The shakes were starting, the adrenaline runoff making her feel unbearably tired. They were lucky to have made it through the last few minutes. Really lucky. That many engineers, that many powers, plus the redhead with her impossible dagger. Thinking about it now, she had no idea how they'd gotten as far as making it out of the bus. And they hadn't even reached Maman yet. "You think this is the right place?" Truck asked. "I do not know," Torp replied. "If I were you, I would have picked a different route, maybe one less dangerous. It was crazy going up against all those engineers." Everyone turned to the Frenchman, glaring, and he broke into a smile that was brighter than the flashlight. He held up his hands. Joke, I am sorry. Yes, I do believe we made the right decision." Herc shrugged. "I can't see Maman putting that many people here if he didn't have something to hide. Chances are we're on the right track. Not like we have a choice now anyway." Pan looked down the passageway again. There was something there, something in the way the walls seemed to shift and blur, nothing to do with the wavering flashlight. It was the same sensation she'd felt up top, a pulse of rancid, gut-churning energy that made her want to tear out her own insides. There and gone again. There and gone again. Like a heartbeat. "We're on the right track," she said. "Yeah," said Marlowe, one hand on his stomach. He looked paper thin, like he might just fold away into nothing. He met her eye, and she knew he felt it too. The engine was inside them, both, and something was calling to them. "What's the plan then?" she asked. "We should call Ostheim, let him know where we are." "He knows," said Herc, pulling a small metal box from his pocket. "Transponder. Not sure if it'll work beneath the ground, but he'll know our entry point." "Then we wait for him, oui?" said Torp, brushing dust and ash from his jacket. "Why?" said Truck. "Old geezer couldn't win a wrestling match against a pudding." "Truck!" yelled Herc. "You saw him, dude. He's about as useless to us down here as a fart in the wind." "Truck!" "What?" Truck said, holding up his hands. "Am I the only one thinking it?" "He's got a point," said Sam. "Looked like he wouldn't have said boo to a goose." "Looked like he would have crapped his pants if he'd seen a goose," added Marlowe. "He's still the boss," said Herc, jabbing a finger at them all. "But no, we're not waiting for him. Our job is to find the engine. One of them, both of them, I don't even know. Find it and work out a way of destroying it. Time is ticking, people. Let's go." He heaved up his backpack, fumbling with the Desert Eagle and the flashlight. "Any of you lazy bastards want to help?" Marlowe took the flashlight from him, shining it down the tunnel. There was barely a scrap of wall that wasn't bone, making Pan feel like she was descending the throat of some huge ancient creature. Skulls stared at her with big, empty eyes. Everything shuddered again, a ripple of bad energy rolling past her. This time it had audio, whispers scuttling around the bowl of her skull like insects. The same sensation she always had standing next to the red door. "Can we go?" she snapped, scratching at her head. If she had to stay here for much longer, she was going to lose her mind. She didn't wait for a reply, just started walking, her shadow leading the way. She conjured a handful of sparks that fizzed over her palm, illuminating the tunnel. Interspersed with the bones were various plaques, touristy stuff that seemed so out of place here it was laughable. This is the public face of the catacombs," Torp said, jogging to her side. "A museum, really, but the tunnels stretch for nearly 200 miles, maybe more. Nobody really knows." She nodded, although she wasn't really listening. It was taking everything she had to put one foot in front of the other. The stench of smoke, of sulphur, of vaporized blood hung in her sinuses, every breath she took reminding her of death. The tunnel seemed to shrink around her, the whole weight of the world pressing down, and suddenly she couldn't breathe at all. "Have no fear, Pan," said Torp, and his arms were around her, reassuringly solid. A cage in an ocean full of sharks. She pushed her face into his chest and inhaled, breathing in the pleasant, unfamiliar smell of him until the panic attack passed. "We are here, we are alive, let us go. We are together. We are here, we are alive, we are together." He squeezed her gently, then let go. She nodded, smudging away the tears that she hadn't even noticed were there. But the passageway did seem wider, the layers of rock and bone overhead a little lighter. Everybody had come to a standstill again, all eyes on her. "Nobody said saving the world would be easy, kiddo," said Herc, his flashlight blinding her. "Oh, piss off," she said. Then Marlowe was there, walking up to her, his arms wide like he meant to swallow her up. She turned away. "And that goes for you too, Marlowe. When you're going through hell, just keep walking." And she did, the tunnel splitting in two. She didn't even hesitate, her blood swelling like an ocean in high tide, pulling her to the left. A red rope stretched from wall to wall, a sign hanging from it saying no entry in half a dozen languages. She stepped over it, the sparks dripping from her fingers and hissing out on the wet floor. "Sure this is right," said Herc as they reached another fork, and Pan led them left. "This is right," she said. She'd never felt the pull of the engine like this, not even in the moments before a contract, standing next to the black pool. It was like it had a hand in her soul, physically dragging her along. Her guts were churning, but it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It was the same sensation she always had before seeing the engine. Dread, yes, and terror and panic and confusion. But excitement too. Always excitement. There was a spiral staircase ahead and she ran down it, careful not to slip on the stone. Her fistful of lightning brought the bones to life, making the skulls seem to chatter. There were more whispers now, so many of them, as if the dead were talking to her. Other noises too, phantom groans, the click of insect tongues, the wet thumps and slices of a butcher's shop. Not sounds, nothing she could pick up with her ears, but she didn't need ears, these were inside her soul. "Oh, Jesus, it's cold down here," said Marlowe, shivering in his t-shirt. "How deep do they go?" "Nobody really knows," said Top. "Nobody has explored the whole thing." "Great," Marlowe muttered. "I thought you were an expert." "I have spent more time underground than anyone else I know," Torp spat back. "You will not find a better guide to the city of the dead." "It's why his name is Torp," said Herc. "It's French for mole." "Mole?" Marlowe said, improvising. "I thought that was because of his big nose and squinty eyes." Torp spun around, jabbing a finger back up the stairs. "You should watch your mouth, petit garçon," he said. "Or what?" Marlowe dropped down another couple of steps so that they were face to face. "You're going to dig a tunnel underneath me? Chien insolent!" Something clattered down the steps above them. A pebble. It skipped past Pan's feet and disappeared around the corner. "Shut up," she said to the bickering boys. Then, when Torp kept speaking, she reached up and grabbed his arm, hard. He turned to her. "That girl," she asked Marlowe, "was she the invisible one?" A scuffing sound from the way they'd come. Pan broke into a run, pushing past Marlowe so hard he toppled onto his ass. She swiped her arms in the air before her, searching. Then she flicked out a bolt of lightning that burned into the stone. Another and another, this one making contact with something that wasn't there. A soft scream inside the rolling waves of thunder, the girl materialising in the dark. She collapsed, her body spasming like she'd been tasered. Pan stumbled up the steps and grabbed her before she could vanish again. Christ, she was young, 13, maybe even 12, 13, maybe 12 even. Her eyes had rolled up in their sockets, her hands groping the air. Then she was back, her face a mask of terror as she realised she'd been caught. "No," she said. Then she was gone, just stone and darkness where she'd been lying. Pan still had her, though, her fingers wrapped around two stick-thin arms. She loosed another jolt of energy and the girl screamed, reappearing. "Don't," said Pan. "The more you struggle, the worse this gets." She shocked her again, just enough to make her pay attention. The girl stopped squirming, then burst into tears, great, heaving sobs. "Maman," she said. "Maman, maman, maman." "Oh, shut up," Pan said. Another shock. The girl started fitting, bucking hard on the steps, foaming at the mouth. "Pan!" It was Marlowe by her side. "She's just a kid." "She's one of his," she spat. "If she's old enough to make a contract, then she's old enough to know what she's doing. Where is he?" Another jolt, and this time Marlowe grabbed her, pulling her away. She lost her balance on the narrow stairs and fell into the wall. Marlowe wrapped his hands around the girl, and the look in his eye was crystal clear. "Don't try it." "You're going to let your pathetic emotions decide what happens to the world," Pan said, pushing herself up. "You're going to let one girl's life get in the way of millions, billions?" "And what if I do?" he shouted back. "If you think a single life is worth sacrificing, then how are you any different from Maman? How are you any different from him?" She opened her mouth to fire something back, realised she didn't have any ammunition. "Screw you, Marlowe," she said. "Maman," the girl whispered. "Yeah, where is he?" Pan said. "Tell us where he's hiding." "She's not saying Maman," said Torp. "She's saying Maman. It means mother, mum. She's scared." "She's not saying Maman," said Torp. Forgot my French accent. "She is saying Maman. It means mother, mum. She is scared, senseless." "It's okay," said Marlowe, still holding her. "We won't hurt you, but look, we need to know where he is. We need to find the engine. I don't know what Maman told you, but you can't want this, can you? You can't seriously want him to win this war." The girl shook her head, her sobs softening. She stared at them all, her eyes so full of tears they could have been made of glass, a doll's eyes. "He promised me," she said in broken English. "He promised us all we would not hurt. I did not think il est un démon, il est le diable, non?" "He's a demon," Torp translated. "The devil." "You've seen him, Maman," Herc asked. The girl nodded, pointing at the floor. "Ici, here, très profond." "Deep," said Torp. "You know the way?" "He will kill me," she said. "Those things, les monstres. I did not think it was real. I did not think it was real." "It's real," said Pam. "About as real as it gets. You need to take us to him." She started to cry again. "No," she said. "He told us what you would do. He told us what would happen if you took the engine for yourselves." "And you prefer his way," said Pam. "You think that's better?" "His way keep me off the street," she said. "His way keep me alive." Pam spat out a laugh, sending another bolt of blinding light thudding into the ceiling. "You want to bet on that?" she said, sparks raining down. "Listen to me. You got one chance. You either take us to him or I kill you right here and right now. You ever seen a watermelon that's had 1,000 volts pumped into it? It's messy." "Non," she said. "S'il vous plaît, s'il vous plaît." "One," said Pan, rippling curves of light dancing on her palm. Her whole arm ached with the pressure of it, her skin tingling with the electric charge. The girl had obviously been brainwashed by Maman, the same way all of his engineers had been. But she must have known. You don't make a deal with the devil and not suspect something. "Two," she said. "Last chance." "It does not matter," she said. "It does not matter any more." It matters to us, Marlowe said. It matters to the world. The girl looked up at him, frowning. It does not matter because you are too late, she said. That's a lie, said Pan. It is the truth, the girl said. And this time she met Pan's eye and didn't blink. You are too late. Maman has already joined the engines. They have won. And all of this stupid war, this stupid fight, it is over. She closed her eyes, squeezing out tears that shimmered in the lightning storm. It is done. Next chapter, I'll do one more. It's over. You're a lying beer, no, yelled Marlowe. Pan was storming towards the girl, her hand crackling, and he threw himself between them. The power leaking from her was enough to make his hair stand on end. The sparks she'd thrown at the ceiling had gouged out a star-shaped crater in the rock, and he didn't want to think about what it would do to the contents of his skull. She wants it to be over, then it can be over for her. No sweat, Pan said, her face twisted into something that didn't look human, that looked almost demonic. Marlowe had never seen her like this, never seen her so full of fury. Even after everything he'd been through, every horror he'd witnessed, it made him feel jellyfish scared, like every bone in his body had turned to seawater. He didn't move, though. He knew that if he did, then Pan would blast the kid to atoms, that they'd all be brushing her ash from their clothes and coughing it from their lungs. We need her, she said. She can still take us there. Marlowe's right, said Herc, clapping a hand on Pan's shoulder and making her flinch. You honestly think she will? You think she's going to just lead us right to the engines? She'll take us the other way, or right into a trap. She's one of his, Herc. She's so full of crap. How can you not see that? Why do you say it's over? Marlowe said to the girl. How do you even know that? Because he told us, she replied. He said that we only had one more battle to fight, one last defense, and his war would be done. He just needed us to keep you away, just for a little while, just so they could finish. And they have. The engines are united. No demons pushing through the walls, no ocean of blood and fire churning down the street. If Maman had succeeded in uniting the engines, then why hadn't he opened the gates? Nothing's any different, Marlowe said. His fingers were cramping where he was holding the girl, and he relaxed them. He still felt her shrug. It takes time, she said. It does not happen instantly. Oh, screw her, said Pan, turning and stomping down the steps. We don't need her to find the engine. It will pull us right to it. She disappeared around the corner of the spiral staircase, her shadow following her. You want her? She's your problem. Torp followed her, then Truck, muttering something about how much he hated stairs. Oh, bring her, said Herc. Better we keep an eye on her. You pull that vanishing act again, kid, and you're toast. You got it? The girl nodded, the fight beaten right out of her. She sniffed, knuckling her eyes. She was looking younger by the second. Herc turned and followed the others, and Marlowe stood, holding out his hand to the girl. She took it, letting him pull her to her feet. She dusted herself down, hauling in a long, broken breath. I'm Marlowe, he said. She studied him for a moment with dark eyes. Claire, she said. Well, Claire, said Marlowe, as he started to walk, keeping hold of a fistful of her jacket, I have to say, you're not the kind of soldier I was expecting to fight for Maman. You are not who I expected either, she said. They made their way down the stairs, just enough light ahead to see by and a wave of impenetrable darkness on their heels. Marlowe kept glancing back into it, expecting to see a razor-toothed jaw open up there, or Maman's face pushing through, eyes blazing. He shuddered, upped his pace, almost slipping on the wet stone. So what made you fight for him? He asked, just to stave off the suffocating silence. Maman isn't exactly nice, and what are you, 14? Nearly, she said, in like a year and a half. You're 12, he said. Oh, and you are much older, yes? 15, he muttered. Loads older. Claire said something in French, but he didn't exactly need a translation to know that she was making fun of him. She sniffed again, shivering, and the stairs kept going, spiralling endlessly. Marlowe's internal organs were fighting a no-holds-barred cage match, but his whole body ringing with the force of the engine. Engines. How did you even end up here? He asked, doing his best to ignore the sensation. I was, how you say, without a home. I live on street. Me and friends, the ones... She swallowed hard. I do not think they survived. Sorry, said Marlowe. I do not know them long. I ran away bad father. Somebody came to see us just as day before. A girl. Red hair, face like a smacked arse. Smacked what? She said, frowning at him. He waved it away, and she nodded. Red hair, yes. She told us that if we helped her for one day, then she would get us off the street, that she would make us rich. She did not say what it was she needed, thus far. She did not say there would be... She choked on her words, brushing away tears. But you saw the engine, right? Marlowe went on, almost slipping again. How deep did these stairs go? He glanced up, seeing a weird, star-shaped mark on the ceiling. Why did it look familiar? Oui, Claire said, nodding. It is horrible. It is the work of the devil, no? Maman threw us into the black water. We could not refuse him, and there was something in there, something impossible. Marlowe knew. He'd seen it too, an entity of darkness as big as a mountain, watching him with insect eyes. This is what you desire, it had asked. The memory made his head ache, and he felt something creep its way down from his nose. Blood. He smudged it away, focusing on the stairs, on their endless down a passage, on another black mark on the ceiling. He frowned, looking back. Nothing but darkness. Reaching out, he pulled one of the skulls from the wall. It came loose with a pop, two of its teeth scattering. He laid it on the step beside him and carried on, ignoring Claire's questioning look. Then what? Marlowe asked her. He said we could have anything we wished for, but that we needed to wish for something that would make us strong, make us powerful, something we could fight with. I did not believe him, but when I was there, I panicked. I just wanted to escape. So I wished to be not seen, to be what is your word? Invisible, he said. That is the same as we say, to be invisible. I don't know how they say it. I thought that this was true, and not some nightmare. And if this was true and not some nightmare, then I could sneak away, but he could still see me. He sees everything. He took us to the surface and told us we needed to fight. If we survive, he said, then we will have anything we wanted. How many of you? Marlowe asked. I do not know, she said. There were 7 of my friends, but there were others there, too many others. Too many for Maman to ever be able to cancel their contracts, Marlowe thought. There just wouldn't be time. He'd set them up to die. Worse than that. He'd set them up so their contracts would expire, so that they would be dragged into hell. But what else had he expected from Maman? Listen, I need to know if you saw my friend, the guys down there. One of them was called Charlie. Charlie? She said. Do not think so. My age, he said, pressing. Dark hair, brown eyes, short, American. Claire stopped walking. Her eyes had grown twice as big, so huge they looked like they might just roll out. The horror on her face was contagious, filling Marlowe's heart. What? He asked. The boy you describe, he was there. Oh, thank God, Marlowe thought, saying, He's alive? I do not know, she said, shaking her head. He was... Was what? Marlowe said. She pushed past him. I cannot talk about it, she said. I cannot. Hey, he called after her. Claire, he's my friend. I need to know. Watch your feet, said Herc beneath them. And Marlowe turned the corner and almost stepped on a skull that lay there. He put a hand to the wall, to the space he'd ripped it from. Then he looked up, knowing what he'd see there. A burn mark, star-shaped, where Pan had fired a bolt of lightning into the ceiling. Hey, guys, he yelled. Hold up! Something's wrong. He heard grumbling beneath them. Then Herc's face appeared. The beam of the flashlight like an explosion in Marlowe's retinas, so bright he could see the veins there. What? He said. We're going round in circles, he said. Duh! Came Pan's voice from below. It's a spiral staircase. No, I mean we've been walking on the same bit of stair for a while now. He struggled to find the words. Like something weird is going on. Pan appeared next to Herc. She shrugged impatiently, and Marlowe pointed to the skull. I just pulled that out of the wall. And that mark? You made that mark, Pan. Pan shook her head, turning and walking off. Marlowe heard her footsteps thud downward, fade, then start again from overhead. And suddenly, Pan was there, above him. Oh, she said. Oh, temporal loop, said Herc, putting a hand to the bone-covered wall. Try going up again. Pan spun around and jogged up the stairs into the darkness. She reappeared a few seconds later, behind Herc. Marlowe felt the terror shift inside him like a tectonic plate, unfathomably huge. He turned, tripping on a step as he struggled up. It was hard to feel anything past the constant churning horror of being this close to the engine, but there was a buzz in his ears, a rash of gooseflesh on his arms, and then he stumbled into the back of truck. The big guy said something, but Marlowe pushed past him, pushed past all of them, twisting around the staircase, ever upwards. And there was Truck again, his bulk just about blocking the path. Marlowe swore, pulling another bone from the wall, and another. There was nothing beneath them but solid stone. Hey, calm down, said Herc. Just let me think. What the hell is going on? Marlowe said, ripping a skull away. It hit the ground and chattered down the steps, gaining momentum, appearing above them as it bounced to a halt. It's part of the engine's defences, Herc said. This must be the outer boundary, the thing that keeps the engine hidden. Hey, kid, you know anything about this? Claire shook her head. She had shrunk back inside the wall, draped in shadow. Even though she wasn't invisible, she was pretty hard to see. We came this way, she said, but this thing was not here. Marlowe had cleared a patch of wall now. And he pushed at the stone beneath. It felt solid and cold. How deep were they? Maybe 100 metres by now. The earth was a solid mass on every side, above and below. He could almost hear the vast weight of it groaning, pushing down on them. He snatched in a breath. No air down here, and the panic was an acetylene torch held against his eyes. How do we get out? He said, turning to Claire. I do not know, she said, shrinking away from whatever was in his expression. I do not know. He reached for the girl, but she backed away, sprawling on the step. How do we get out? He roared, and this time he lashed out, his fist striking the wall, splinters of bone detonating. He punched it again, the stone cracking. Dust rained down from the ceiling like a handful of soil on a coffin. He punched again, and this time the stones moved, crumbling outward. The fourth attack left a hole in the wall, darkness pouring through from the other side. The entire stairwell trembled, the pressure changing so fast that Marlowe's ears ached. Time. Snapping back. Marlowe 1, wall 0, said Truck, stepping up beside him and planting a calming hand on his shoulder. You feeling better? The dark wasn't the only thing entering the stairwell. There was a breeze too, cold and stale, but still beautiful. Marlowe inhaled until he thought his lungs would burst, the monster inside him shrinking away. Herc stepped up and stuck his head through the hole that Marlowe had made. Can't see a damn thing, he muttered. He opened his backpack and rummaged around inside, pulling out a flare. Striking it on the wall, he lobbed it out. Ground not too far below, can't make out much else. You know what's down there, kid? Claire didn't need to answer. It was pretty clear what was down there. Marlowe's flesh crawled with it, like a churning foam of spiders had ridden in on that wave of darkness, crawling on his skin, chittering their way into his nose, his ears, his eyes. He scratched, groaning, his head suddenly full of whispers and screams. He dug a finger into his ear to find an impossible itch, would have happily stuck a knitting needle in there and pushed it into the flesh of his brain. No, she didn't need to answer, but she did anyway. Hell, she said, her voice almost drowned out by the madness that roiled inside Marlowe's skull. Hell is down there. And we'll stop there for today, but the next chapter, The Liminal, is quite horrific in that it's one of the most horrible descriptions in the series and probably one of the most horrible things ever. So I'll look forward to that. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in to Gaudy TV. And yeah, I'll see you very soon. Okay. Bye. Have fun. Bye.